Greetings, innovators and leaders. This is AI for the C-Suite, your compass for navigating the exponential age. I'm Chad Harvey, and we're here to bring you cutting-edge insights on AI tailored specifically for middle-market organizations. Buckle up as we embark on a journey through the transformative world of artificial intelligence. My guest today is Josh Hartranft, Chief Technology Officer for Millersville University of Pennsylvania. Go Marauders! More on that later. Josh is an accomplished IT leader with over 25 years of experience in higher ed technology services. As CTO at MU, he successfully managed technology support teams, driven innovative IT solutions, and enhanced system security and infrastructure. Also, more on that later. With the explosion of generative AI, Josh has also been at the forefront of integrating this transformative tech into the business operations of the university. His focus has been on identifying key areas where AI can add value, whether through automating routine tasks or enriching academic programs, to ensure that Millersville University stays at the cutting edge of technological advancements. Josh, welcome to AI for the C-Suite.
Thanks, Chad.
You betcha. To kick things off, why don't you tell us about your journey into the world of AI and how you've seen it evolve in recent years? Everybody's got an origin story, and I'd love to hear yours.
Thanks, Chad. So I've been around the block for a little while, and I've been in IT since the explosion of big data, the algorithm age, where AI really came into play, especially for doing back-end tasks like analyzing security logs, et cetera. But again, it was all algorithm-based. Really, what it was for me is I had the opportunity to go up to MIT to attend MTech. And it's a story that I know you're familiar with.
I am.
And at that MTech, this is 24. So that was 22, I believe. Mm-hmm. Or was it 21? I don't know. Post-COVID dates are fuzzy, but basically it was right after OpenAI had released Wall-E. DALL-E, sorry, not Wall-E.
We'll watch that movie later.
Exactly. and I was absolutely blown away by what I was shown. It was unbelievable. And I believe right after I finished that session, I called you up and I was like, hey, you have to sign up for this and you've got to give it a try because it's going to blow your mind. They hadn't released GPT 3.5 yet at that point in time. Right. So nobody knew about ChatGPT, which came very shortly after. That was equally as mind-blowing to go into ChatGPT for the first time and to type something in and get the responses that you did. It was really transformational. So my business being in higher education, obviously, the number one thing was, oh my gosh, cheating, right? Students are never gonna, you're never gonna have a calculator in your pocket all the time, right? Now look at what you've got. So we've gone through this process of trying to work beyond, like, ChatGPT is not a tool for cheating, right? How can we leverage these generative AI tools to improve the process for students? So we're having a lot of discussions on the appropriate uses of this tool from a student standpoint, so that it isn't a detriment to your education, but actually an advantage to your education. And also trying to work with faculty members to build the use of these tools and overviews and training and expectations of these tools into their courses. So that we're preparing students who have experience working with generative AI, especially when they get out into the real world, because the adage is AI isn't going to take your job. Somebody who knows how to use AI is.
Right. I think you're at such an interesting intersection. I'm glad you segued us directly into the student population and what Millersville is doing. And I know that you're more on the cabinet level side and the administrative side as opposed to the educational or the pedagogical side. Yet you do cross over. I know you teach a course there. And I'm interested, what are you doing and what is the organization and the educational institution doing given the rapid advances with this technology? What kind of fundamentals and foundational training are you finding is most or best really for the students in order to prepare them for this rapidly changing environment?
Yeah, so that's a great question because I think especially in higher ed, we have this kind of decentralized model, especially when it comes to academic freedom and what's included in curriculum and who determines that. But fortunately, we've what we did is we established an AI task force on campus, and the goal of that task force was to assess how tools were being used on campus, and make recommendations on ways that we could better use these tools or how we could get them injected into curriculum. There was also, again, as I said, because of cheating, there was also an early effort to update our academic honesty policy to make sure that it included language specifically related to what is plagiarism when it comes to artificial intelligence. So we have a freshman seminar here that all freshmen go through. And we're working on trying to implement some basic AI training into that course. Really, a lot of our focus at this point isn't so much on how to use the tool, but it's more how not to use the tool, if that makes sense, because I think it's easier to guide students on how not to use the tool to get themselves into a situation where, they're essentially plagiarizing. They're having ChatGPT actually write their paper. We have some dedicated faculty that are, because we're a teachers college. That's our background at Millersville University, and we had some folks from the education department in the AI task force. But they've also been doing some work on their own. So there's been some faculty seminars that have gone on to try to get faculty up to speed on some of this, and to get them to use it with the students. There's this idea, kind of like the flipped classroom, where students do some of the work outside of the class. I'll say it's flipping a little bit of the process where they're saying, don't put a prompt into AI and have it write your paper. Use it as a sounding board to throw ideas off of. Ask it questions. How can I improve this? That one faculty member is doing a project with some of his doctoral students, specifically around using generative AI as a writing assistant to evaluate writing and make suggestions on where you could do better. So I think that's one of the ways that we're trying to do things. Again, we're everybody I think is at a lot of the beginning stages. There's some companies that have put a lot of effort into this. Education generally moves a little bit slower when it comes to this side of things. But yeah, so we're trying to catalog the way that people are using tools. We're tracking usage on campus. So I'm able to do that from the network side of things to get an idea of popular tools. We're reaching out to people saying, hey, what are you doing? How can we leverage that? And ultimately, the goal is to get that information into our faculty's hands so that they can then start using that in the classroom space. Obviously, we're going to have students who are way ahead at some points, but such as any new technology.
Yeah. I love the fact that you are tracking the tool usage on campus that folks are accessing, because that goes really to the heart of one of the things that I've been working with organizations on, which is how do you democratize this? How do you get these tools in the hands of the people that are doing the work and then let them evaluate the best use case to drive value for the organization? And what you've got there is a gold mine, quite frankly, and a really cutting edge insight, I would say.
Yeah, I have to say also it was pretty interesting because I've felt like OpenAI has really had the upper hand for the
Hmm.
majority of the time.
Oh yeah.
However, I was really surprised at how much more usage Claude had in the fall semester.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, in the spring semester
Oh, okay.
this past year. So we're talking,
Hmm.
April, May time frame. The
That is
usage
interesting.
just totally diverged. Yeah.
Really? Wow. That's
Mm-hmm.
interesting because, as you and I have talked about offline, the real powerful update didn't come out with Claude until this summer 24. So I'm surprised to see that the usage spike occurred in the spring. Hmm.
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with maybe the fact that a lot of the tools designed to detect AI were built off of
Yeah.
OpenAI type platforms.
I hear what you're
Um,
saying there.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, we'll just stop there. That's
that's
great.
right.
Um, you said two other things that really caught my interest. One, which we're going to acknowledge and drive by. The other, I want to go a little bit deeper in. Policy is an area where private organizations in the middle market really struggle. So I think it's really fantastic that you're positioned and have that policy out in terms of usage for the students and most likely the staff and faculty as well. That's something that I can't stress enough for our listeners of organizations of any size. You got to put some guardrails in, right? More importantly, I'd really be interested in your perspective on what you did to form the task force and the charge and the mission and the structure you gave to it to make it successful in the short and the long term, because a lot of organizations that I get calls from get stuck at the AI task force level. They put it together and they'll call me and say, we've been working on this for 8 months or 10 months or 12 months and we're not getting anywhere. So everybody really wants to crack that code. What is the secret to success for a good quality AI task force? No pressure.
Yeah. So no, not at all. I think number one, we're a fairly large organization as far
Sure.
as the number of employees. We're around 1,000 employees, and being an academic institution, there's a lot of loud voices, I'll
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a few things. Number one, we wanted to make sure that we didn't make the task force too large,
Mm-hmm.
too many people, and you just can't seem to accomplish anything. So from our standpoint, we kept it under 12 here at the university, which
That's
we
great.
have a tendency. Yeah, we have a tendency to have committees of 30 people or more sometimes. So keep it small. Number two, our president was very involved, had some very specific outcomes that he wanted. Specifically, he wanted to know um, how are we currently using AI, and how is our industry using AI,
Mm.
and what do we really need to put into place ASAP, so that we can leverage the tool, but also be, one of the early people in the state of Pennsylvania from a higher education standpoint. So he came, he charged the group. I gave regular updates to our council of trustees, which is essentially our board of directors. And so having I've always said homework makes you actually get the work done for the meeting. So
Mm-hmm.
having that structure of knowing that in 3 months I'm presenting to the board, in 6 months I'm presenting to the board, you make sure that you stay on task. Um, we surveyed our entire campus to get people's feelings on their comfort level with AI, what tools that they were using. That study was a big part of the basis for establishing where we were at, as well as using the tools that we had in our toolbox to monitor the usage on campus. Obviously, we couldn't see what people were doing. We just know what tools they were connecting to. Um, I think it's don't make it too large, because you can really choke on this topic,
Mm-hmm.
and try to make sure that you have a clear set of deliverables for the task force. Now, at the completion of the task force, we're rolling into a standing AI committee. Yes, we passed policy. There's more policy for us to do. There's
Mm-hmm.
more discussions to be had on ethical uses. Um, there's a lot more to do, but the goal of the task force was pretty straightforward, and kind of developing this report on what the recommendations that we thought would best serve the university as we progressed.
It's fantastic. I love how you laid that out there. And who would have thought that homework and accountability would actually lead to results?
Right, right.
Uh, in all seriousness, though, you said something a minute ago. You talked about the president of the university asking what needed to be put into place. And I know that you're in a unique position, and we'll touch on this here in a little bit regarding your infrastructure. Was there anything hardware or software wise that you needed to put into place to be able to begin the exploration, or to position yourselves once you spin this into a standing committee to be able to move forward on a larger level and start to scale things up?
Yeah, without jumping ahead to what I anticipate as a future question, we're very data security sensitive here.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into that in a little bit. So there's always the concern of what are people putting into these freely available tools, and are they copying and pasting spreadsheets with personally identifiable information into them? And when you do that, what happens to it? Because even the experts can't answer that question, right? Does
Right.
your data go into the training set? Does it not? I don't know. Again, even the experts can't really definitively answer that question. And as we've seen with some of the ways that the early OpenAI training happened, it's. I mean, I guess we've seen
Yep.
European lawsuits. Nothing in the U.S. that I'm aware of right now, but certainly a lot of complaints about scraping of content everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
um, we want to make sure that when we roll a tool out, that we do something that's as protected as we can be, but not overly limiting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So because otherwise, we call it shadow IT, right? If you don't provide a good tool, they'll go out and find their own, and there's always going to be some of that, but we need to educate our users that the reason that we're focusing on Copilot because we're very heavily in the Microsoft 365 environment,
Mm-hmm.
and they offer some fantastic benefits for education customers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that we want to focus on. This is why we want you to use the tool that we're providing when you're doing X, Y, or Z. But if you're doing A, B, and C, you can feel free to use GPT. But we're not going to be setting up a corporate account with OpenAI or with Claude to try to buy bulk users for our campus.
Right. I want to go a little bit deeper on what you just touched on with Microsoft Copilot, because Copilot and Office, for better or worse, and I would argue for better. I'm an Office convert and a Microsoft fan over the last 5 or 10 years. Never was before, but they've made great strides. So I want to make that clear in case the overlords are listening. That Microsoft seems to be doing a very good job, and I get a lot of questions about Copilot. There's a ton of confusion because, quite frankly, they've got a branding problem as well. And I don't know if you saw this, but just a day or two ago, they announced that come September of 24, they're totally rebranding the way all the Copilot stuff is labeled. So that'll be interesting. But more to the point here, what are you finding the usability of Copilot to be? What kind of feedback are you getting from folks? Because, quite frankly, I'm getting a lot of feedback from users that it's underwhelming.
So many of the people that we've rolled Copilot out to are pretty new to the
Okay.
AI.
Got it.
idea, right? So, for example, somebody who's preparing remarks for a speech that they have to give in front of a group.
Hmm.
If they open Copilot, they're really pretty pleased with the results that they're
Okay.
getting out of it. Um, but again, they're not necessarily somebody who's spent a lot of time using ChatGPT or Claude, and who hasn't been doing the higher level things like feeding it research papers, and really crunching information and distilling it down into something that is easily understandable and easily shared with other people. So I would say I haven't heard that yet, um, but we're fairly early in our Copilot rollout.
Hmm.
We have a Copilot pilot
Okay.
that we're doing with a number of users on campus.
What's that?
But
What's
I
that look
think
like? What's that
okay,
co-pilot
so
pilot look like? Yeah. Talk a little
right.
more about
So
that.
let's get to we'll go back to where you started with the problem Microsoft has is a branding problem, right?
Yeah.
So when you say Copilot, they really have, I think, at least four products.
Yep.
So when I say Copilot, my pilot that I'm running is in Copilot for M365.
Okay.
So that's not, you can get to it through the web, but it's not the web version of
Right.
Copilot. And the advantage of Copilot for M365 is it has access to everything that user has access to. So it's got awareness of your Outlook mailbox. It's got awareness of your calendar. It's got awareness of your teams, and it's got awareness of the shared documents that you have shared with you, as well as the things that you have stored in your OneDrive. So all of that information is what is kind of in the training set for Office for M365. So when we talk about one of the great features, and one of the things that AI has always been through sci-fi, right, is that personal assistant.
Right.
How do I make life easier for myself to be able to go in and say, I was on vacation last week. Can you please summarize my email and create an action list of things that I need to do?
Mm.
Right. Even my live assistant, who's
Right.
fantastic, can't do it that quick. Right.
She's
So,
listening
I
just
mean,
outside the door, right?
100%. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think those, for people that are doing a lot of work,
Yeah.
those types of things can really help organize and make work easier for people, make you work more efficiently. So the difference is there's a licensing model. So it gets a little saucy from a licensing perspective. It's X dollars per user per month.
Hmm.
So you have to determine, should this user get a licensed copy, or the Copilot web version? If you have it enabled, you can have corporate data protection turned on.
Hmm.
So the Copilot web version, now we can feel comfortable that a user can go in and they can attach a file and they can ask questions about it. But what happens with that prompt and all the associated information is it's deleted at the end of that session.
Got it.
Right. So you can feel confident that Microsoft says that this is not going into the training data for Copilot Web, and you're not giving away secrets or
Hmm.
potentially putting yourself at risk for exposing information.
I think that's a really good perspective, and I'm glad you spent a couple minutes explaining that, because the security
Yeah.
issue is one that is near and dear to a lot of folks' hearts, especially in private sector land. So that should
Yeah.
give them a degree of confidence there.
So I do think that I didn't totally answer your question, though, because you asked about the pilot process.
Yeah.
And the pilot process, what we did is we rewarded the members of the AI task force, who
Hmm.
are also typically the ones that are further ahead than a lot of other users,
Hmm.
by giving them access. And then we picked some key positions on campus, mostly in the higher executive realm, to see how that could impact what they're doing. And so what we're doing with this process is we're requesting regular feedback from users. We're also creating a shared document where we're adding the prompts that we have found to be very useful, trying to create some sort of a prompt library. And the goal from that is to create some base training that we can go out and say, in 30 minutes, we can get somebody started and we can say, hey, listen, here's some things that are proven, that are easy to do, and we'll give you good results. Start there.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love the idea, and I love the fact that you're at the point where you're starting to develop your own resource library of prompts and cues for the systems. And the fact that you're all in, so to speak, on the Copilot initiative that Microsoft has, I think it makes it a little bit easier because, as you well know, the results that you get and the prompting and the conversations you need to have with these systems from one platform to the next, the outputs vary, right? So having kind of locked in and dialed in on one platform makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, especially for an organization of our size.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about security. And for an organization of your size. And I think that you're in a very unique position, and the university has a unique story to tell given what it's been through over the last couple of years. And let's just pull the curtain back on that, and I'm going to kind of turn it over to you maybe to tell the story of where you've been and where you are now, and in my opinion, how that is positioning you to be in a better field advantage to take advantage of AI and move forward. So let me just stop talking here, and the floor is yours for a moment.
Thanks, Chad. This is always, we always have these conversations about computer security. And if you're a decent sized organization, a lot of the conversation turns to it's not if, it's when you experience some sort of a data breach, right?
Yep.
In our case, we experienced a ransomware attack shortly after returning from COVID. Like many other institutions, we had poked some holes in some of our security to enable some remote access to get through what we needed to do to be able to maintain business during COVID.
Yep.
And unfortunately, one of those holes ended up being taken advantage of, and we experienced that ransomware attack. We made it out pretty good. We had not a huge number of records exposed, but we did have some data exposed. And for anybody who's experienced this is a very uncomfortable situation to be in, because it's real easy to lose the trust of people. And it's really hard to regain that trust. So it led us to a large scale rebuild of our network, based more around security. We're not quite zero trust. We have a goal of being zero trust, but I think it's very difficult in an open academic environment to get to that point. But obviously, it means that everything that we do has a focus on security and data security. And so that's been, forefront in our thinking as we're rolling out, not even AI tools, but any tool that we use here at the university. So yeah, it's when we look from the AI lens, what have we been doing? So we've really been focused on trying to leverage the tools that Microsoft has available to us. We have all of our data in Office 365. We don't know who has shared what with whom on campus. And as a result, what AI would have access to. So we're working actually with a managed service provider, a third party, that offers a Microsoft service to help evaluate things like data sensitivity labels, data classification, and enabling policies that use Microsoft's tools for data loss prevention. So it's a mix of, I label some of my data gets auto-labeled, and depending on what those classifications and labels are, people have things that they're able to do with it or not able to do with it based on their level and setup. So again, the goal here is to prevent data loss. Data loss is extremely expensive. It's difficult to remediate. And again, the key there is trust. And it's very expensive to regain trust. So that's our focus. And since we're in that Office 365 environment, if a company is in this Office 365 environment, again, I don't want to sound like a Microsoft fanboy myself, but they have an excellent suite of tools to secure not just data, but also your endpoints. So I highly recommend that if people haven't, they begin researching some of these tools, data loss prevention, especially, and Microsoft has some programs in place, quick starts to if you license the technology already, but you don't have it enabled, they can do some quick starts to get you through it.
My sense is that, and I say my sense because obviously I don't have insight into every private middle market company out there, but I can tell you just within the last 6 months alone, I know at least of 8 companies, 5 of whom had either ransomware attacks or data breaches, another 3 where their ERP vendor was compromised. One earlier this year I know of, half of an industry went down. So the fact is that what you've talked about here is very real for a lot of organizations, and it's probably a much bigger threat than most people want to recognize or understand, because so much of it gets swept under the carpet, or it's just not talked about publicly. It's not if, it's when, as you said. And
right.
Yeah, and I think the rise of a lot of these AI systems and tools are actually, from what I'm seeing out there, starting to further democratize a lot of the tools and systems that are available to the bad actors as well, increasing the threat level. So with all that said, with the goal and the drive towards zero trust, but understanding in an open academic environment, you're never going to quite get there. How confident are you in the new system that you guys have built?
I would never say I'm extremely confident.
Right.
I think that the team has done an amazing job.
Yeah.
I think that we're pretty advanced when it comes to these tools, but you're always as vulnerable as your weakest link.
Yep.
And the reality is we have 1,000 employees, we have 6,500 students, most of which are visiting our site and are here physically. And those that aren't are still accessing our systems virtually. So you still have to maintain things like training programs. You have to be doing regular penetration testing, evaluating how your defenses are working, and trying to make sure that you're keeping up with things as mundane as making sure your Windows patches are up to date. It's scary how easy it is sometimes for these things to happen, and it's also scary that how innovative the bad guys are.
Yeah.
And how, so I'll give you a great example, right? Everybody from COVID on moved to multi-factor authentication, right? And everybody thinks, hey, multi-factor authentication, I'm totally safe. But that's not really the case. There's something that people can do, and they can basically pop a web page, have you click a button, and boom, they've stolen your login token. They don't have to MFA if they have your login token, right? So you have to protect against that, So it's a cat and mouse game, from security, and unless you're a huge company with millions and millions of dollars, you never have enough resources to do as much as you want. So you have to maintain vigilance.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you the one thing that we did to try to give us as much peace of mind as possible is we went out and contracted with a managed security operations center,
Mm-hmm.
and that security operations center is it's watching all of our traffic and it's receiving all of our logs.
Mm.
And so they're watching that information, and they have the ability when they detect to cut off bad traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
even that is not 100%, right? It's all layers. It's layers of an onion, and how far can you peel back before you get to well, there's no good stuff at the middle of an onion, I guess, but the
Just that
tootsie
tiny
in the
little
middle
core.
of the pop, right?
That's right.
Right.
I appreciate you walking us down that. I know it's a subject that you are unfortunately very well versed in. I know. Look, full disclosure, I've known you for what I think this is the 4th decade I've known you, and I know for a while you were sleeping in your office there. That was a difficult, dark time, and if anybody on Josh's team is actually listening, he had nothing but high praise for all of his team members during that time. So congratulations on getting through that. I know that was something you don't care to revisit.
100%.
Let's switch gears back to AI a little bit. I have a question that just kind of popped to mind based on what you just mentioned. You gave out the stats here about 6,500 students, 1,000 employees. So we've got 7,500 users on campus, essentially. Here's my question. As AI continues to evolve and we continue to see more agents and more video conversation and generation of video and video interaction, how much of a problem is it in terms of your network capacity to be able to meet that increased demand? I mean, it's one thing for us to be positioned for video conferencing as it is right now, but when we start to deploy agents over the next couple of years that are interacting with us like you and I are talking right now all the time, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for us, with building for an education environment, the idea is that the student would bring their own device into class and would have the ability to, say, connect to YouTube and stream a video.
Okay.
So I think.
So you're overbuilt.
Listen, we are over. Yeah. We tried to overbuild for that reason, because at least in our world, the funding isn't always there to replace, your access points or your wireless network. So you get what you get when you can.
Right.
But we've tried to be very forward focused on technology, and knowing that we're seeing an increased use of technology in teaching. I mean, we went from the days where teachers would ask you to not use your device in the classroom to the days where the teachers are asking you to bring your device to the classroom, right? And so I feel fairly good that we're in a good place when it comes to that. But certainly the use of bandwidth is just growing exponentially. When I started here, we were on 100 meg connection. This was .com era, right? And now, right, we all have more than 100 megs in our houses, probably, or a good number of us have more than 100 megs in our houses. I mean, heck, you can get 50 on your cell phone.
Quite right.
So it's another kind of cat and mouse game, and keeping track of your network utilization and figuring out where you're at and trying to plan so that you're always ahead is a difficult task. But again, you have to kind of keep those metrics and do capacity planning from an IT standpoint to try to make sure that you're meeting capacity.
I think capacity is an interesting subject across the board. And what have you seen in terms of the need to develop human capacity, both on the staff and the faculty level, with the changes that are coming with AI? I know you talked about the learning libraries and the exploratory committee, things like that. What does it look like for an institution of your size to start to engage in almost a train the trainer model and to educate from the ground up what some of these tools are and what that's all about?
Yeah, I think this is one thing that we're struggling with. It's difficult
Yeah.
because I think that we've got this idea that anybody who went to high school in the 2000s and later are digital natives, right?
Mm,
This idea of the digital native, I think, it's junk.
yeah.
They're digital consumers,
Hmm.
and they're excellent at consuming. But when it comes to utilizing the tool for especially difficult tasks,
Right.
we're finding that people are deficient, and I don't want this to sound disparaging of our people, but
Right.
people are deficient in some of the base level things that you expect that they're coming to you with that ability,
Hmm.
and it's our students as well. Our students grow up, giving presentations as young as second and third grade, but we find that they're not that great at using PowerPoint,
Hmm.
which is surprising.
Yeah.
So, we see this with in our administrative offices. We see this with Excel. The ability to use Excel has kind of diminished,
Hmm.
and people are able to do the regular tasks that they do every day. It's the uh-oh tasks that pop up
Mm.
that create a problem, and it tends to create a dependency and a little bit of a lag on IT,
Mm.
because we're expected to step in,
Hmm.
and solve those problems and teach those users. So to your point, we're working on a new set of trainings, to try to improve digital literacy on campus.
Hmm.
So we're trying to leverage Microsoft's materials as much as
Yeah.
possible. Again, since we're so heavily involved in the Microsoft M365 environment, and they have some real good learning materials.
Hmm.
We have some online libraries, but the difficulty is getting people to take advantage of it. And so
Hmm.
we're trying to think about things like, can we create our own micro credentials?
Mm.
Where if you stack some credentials, it makes you eligible for the next level, in your position, or
Hmm.
something along that lines. We're not there yet.
Hmm.
It's just something that we're thinking about, but I think it's I think that's a difficult problem that I think a lot of people are facing, is this kind of digital skills gap.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
I think that's really a very thoughtful answer. It's interesting what you're doing at the university, and I liked the way you characterized some of those one-offs as "uh-oh" tasks. Right.
yeah,
One of the things and I'd never heard that vernacular deployed before, despite a lot of conversations with you over the years. So that was interesting. It kind of caught my attention. What do you think the impact on a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity is on those uh-oh tasks? Because I can tell you from personal experience, when I don't know how to do something, that's usually my first go-to anymore. Build me a set of instructions on how to create blah, 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 right?
right. Yeah. So we always used to say in IT, like, our secret is we just ask Google, right? And it tells us the answer. You're 100% correct. I think AI, this is one of the transformative things for
Right.
AI, is assisting in these situations. I'll give you a perfect example. Today, my administrative assistant shot me a message and said, "Hey, I moved something, and it not everything moved, and I need some help."
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, she sent me the message. Never mind. I asked our new help desk chatbot, and it answered the question. So we're just rolling out a help desk chatbot that's built on OpenAI. It's by our help desk system provider, so it
Okay.
isn't something that we built in house. But again, you know, going and asking that tool, and the other thing that I think that this generative AI can do and do really well is it can put it in a level that anybody can understand. So if
Mhm.
you ask a question and it gives you a response and you're like, I don't know what you mean, you can be like, tell me this like I was a fifth grader,
Right.
and it can.
Hmm.
And so yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think this has the potential to really solve that problem. What we have to do is get people to use these tools,
Right. Right.
right? You have to promote these. You have to get them in front of people. Um, yeah, sometimes you have to sit down and walk them through using it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think you touched on a really important component there. We hear a lot in the AI world about creating personas and asking a system to assume a certain persona. What we don't hear a lot about is what you just identified, which is tailoring the content for a specific audience, right? So teach it to me or break it down like I'm a 15-year-old or whatever, whatever. And I think that's a really important critical step that's missed an awful lot of the time. So
yeah, I agree 100%.
good
Yep.
deal. All right. I know our time here is running short. It goes quickly. What else would you share with our audience about the world of AI as it pertains to your world? So, is there any advice that you'd give C-suite executives regarding the journey that you've been on and the learnings that you've undertaken? Is there any, pearl out there that you could surface for them that would be useful?
I think, especially for C-suite folks, time is valuable,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
it's very difficult to carve out the time
Hmm.
to play, right? But I really think you have to play with some of these tools to really, really get an understanding of what they're able to do and
Hmm.
how they can benefit you. Um, I think I go back to one of the top TED talks ever. Was I can't remember his name, the British guy talking about how we don't play
Right.
anymore. And so I would say if you can set aside some time for yourself to play and to research and to try some of these things, so that you have some knowledge about these items other than just everything that you're hearing.
Hmm. Fantastic advice. It's almost like I turned you into a ventriloquist dummy. I gave that same advice to the CEO of a middle market company just yesterday, who was wondering where do I
Excellent.
start. And play. I love the fact that you used the word play. That is, I think, really critical. And I've even seen studies as recently as a month ago that show it takes about 10 hours of play with one of these tools to get conversant with it and start to figure out, okay, now that I know how to use it, where can I drive value and what can I really unleash with this thing? So,
Right. And you pointed out that these tools are also transitioning from simply a keyboard input to a conversational and soon video based tool. At night when you're sitting on the couch, and you have a question, let's ask ChatGPT, right?
hmm.
Let's ask Claude. Um, you know,
Yep.
you'll be surprised sometimes at what comes back.
Yeah, you really will. And the conversations that you can have using the audio feature are very, very impressive. And I think that's something a lot of people still don't understand if they're not a power user, if you will, is the
Yep.
ability to interact with these systems conversationally instead of just typey. So,
Yep. Yep.
all right.
100%.
Josh, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your insights with us today. This was absolutely fantastic, and it was a pleasure for me. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you, learn more about Millersville University, or maybe pick your brain, not to bombard you with inbound messages or LinkedIn direct requests, which I'm sure you get a ton of, like I do. What is the best way for somebody to reach out to you or to learn more about Millersville and your work?
So, obviously Millersville's got a pretty prominent website, and you can visit the website. But my information is available on the web. I am on LinkedIn, and people can reach out to me via those methods.
Perfect. I love it. I may have to have you back at a future date, not just because, I've known you for 4 different decades, but because I think you're at a really interesting intersection in terms of the size of the organization and the space that you're in terms of higher ed and education and the tools that you guys are getting exposed to and playing with. You're at a really interesting spot, and I'm fascinated to have more conversation with you in the future and see where things are going at the Ville. So,
almost every day is fun.
I love it. And I guess full disclosure, I am a Ville alumni, which is where I met Josh originally. He never left, as I like to joke. So it's turned out pretty well for him, I think. All right.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. All right, Josh. Thank you very much again. And for our listeners, thank you all for tuning in to AI for the C-Suite, where we're committed to helping middle market leaders thrive during the exponential age. If you found value in today's discussion, be sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on all of the socials, and visit our site, aifortheCsuite.com. Join us next time as we continue to unlock the potential of AI for your organization, and until then, keep your algorithms running, your leadership evolving, and your AI in check. Thanks, everybody.